Today we're going to work on a monochromatic piece that creates form through value. First, we're going to start by creating a collaged background. What we want to do is find a mixture of text and photos. We're going to use both of those just to create a background. Keep in mind that a lot of this is going to be partially hidden, so it doesn't need to be perfect or exact in any way. Just kind of will add a little bit more interest. You want to make sure that you're tearing your edges instead of cutting them. First of all, because that's going to be a little bit more interesting. It's also going to create a little bit more transition from one piece to the other. But lastly, it's also going to help the glue adhere. A lot of times if you have a sharp and cut edge, it tends to get snagged and pull off of your piece. So make sure that you are tearing your pieces instead of cutting them. Next, we're going to take a little bit of watered down white. We're going to use either gesso for this or a white tempera. You can use acrylic, but sometimes the concern with acrylic paint is that because it's also got a plastic base and the magazine pictures can be glossy, sometimes the acrylic can tend to peel off when you're trying to draw on top of it. So we're just going to give it a nice coat with the white where it's going to soften the contrast a little bit and allow us to draw on top of it, but still create a little bit of additional interest in the background. For this piece, we're going to be choosing one color to work with, and I know the color that I want to work with is going to be green. So I incorporated that a little bit in the pictures that I chose. I chose a tree and some flowers and whatnot because I wanted to stay with this kind of earth-friendly kind of feeling. With that in mind, I decided to also add a little bit of green and maybe just a little bit of yellow that is very, 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 very slight and watered down just to my white background for a little bit of additional interest. At this point, I'm going to set this aside to dry and I'm going to come back to it the next day. So you want to make sure that you finish this part in one sitting. Now that my piece is dry, I'm going to go ahead and start to sketch my picture. So if you're creating a portrait or an animal or whatever, you just want to try to get the outlines and the proportions accurate at this point. So I'm doing an extremely light sketch with my pencil. You can see that I'm working with a black and white image. I would suggest that if that is available to you, because it's going to be easier for you to find the shadows, midtones, and highlights if it is already converted to a black and white image. Once you have a basic outline of what you're going to draw, I'm going to choose a bunch of different shades of the same color. So as I said, I chose green, so I tried to find every colored pencil that was any shade of green that I could use for this. I pulled those aside and I decided to start with shadows. So I'm going to take my darkest version of green and I'm just going to start to color in any area using hatching that seems to be very, very dark. So I'm looking for pure blacks on my black and white photo. Remember, I'm using only hatching on this, so I keep on moving my pencil only in one direction. Once I have all the obvious shadows, I'm going to go back and try to pick up the next tone, the mid-tone. So I'm looking for darker grays at this point, and I'm going to start to fill those in. After that, I'm going to pick up on mid-tone grays, and remember, you can always go back to the shadows if you start to notice something that you missed. Feel free to go back and add those. For this reason, you want to try to keep all those colored pencils with you. So you're slowly going to work from the darkest to the lightest tones. Lastly, I'm going to use my very lightest version of that color to create some highlights. Don't forget about the background. You're certainly welcome to ignore it while you're focusing on your figure. However, you can always come back and fill that in. So if you take a look at the comparison, you can see that this isn't a completely accurate version of the picture. However, the nice thing is that the hatching is going to create that anyway, so it creates a little bit of an abstract view of it. You want to make sure that you're using that because it kind of helps to create a little bit of forgiveness if you don't have it exactly the way that you wanted to. And just like that, we've covered a number of topics here. We've covered value, where we can tell the darks and lights apart. We've covered hatching, which is a shading method. And we've created a monochromatic piece, meaning one color. Now it's time for you to get started.